Hey, fourth grade, let's get started with this week's remote learning and reading. We are making a big transition this week from informational texts back to fiction texts. Today we'll focus on analyzing characters. Turn and talk. What do you remember about character traits from our realistic fiction unit and our historical fiction unit? That was our first unit and the most recent unit we finished before we went to remote learning. Hopefully you remembered that a character trait is a way to describe someone. It's their personality, and these things change slowly or may stay the same throughout a whole story. I remember back in the historical fiction unit and the realistic fiction unit, there was some confusion about character traits versus emotions. Character traits are not character emotions. A character's feelings or emotions depend on what is happening in a moment and can change many times throughout a story. So a character could be afraid or sad or happy or excited, but those are emotions or feelings. They are not character traits. Character traits are adjectives, and this is a list of many character traits that you have access to. It's linked in the slides for the week, so you can go back to this and see if you need it for a resource when you're describing different characters you find in your fiction texts. Learning target. I can analyze the words, actions, and thoughts of a character to determine their traits. To be successful, students will read a short fiction story and write a paragraph analyzing the main character and their traits. So to analyze means to examine closely, and a character is someone who appears in a book, a play, a movie, or another story. This text should be familiar to you. We used it during our historical fiction unit, Sailing Toward America. And there are 3 questions I'm going to ask myself when I look at this story so that I can analyze the main character's traits. I'm going to ask, who is the main character? What do you notice about their thoughts, words, and actions? And how can the character's thoughts, words, and actions help you to determine a character trait that describes them? I went through and I underlined the characters' words in this story. I highlighted their thoughts and I circled the characters' actions. That helped me break apart and analyze their character traits so I could answer these questions. The main character in this story is Emily. And I noticed that Emily's thoughts, words, and actions change from the beginning of the story to the end. At first, she is crying and thinks longingly of Ireland. At the end, Emily eagerly asks, "So how many days until we get to New York?" and smiles. Based on Emily's thoughts, words, and actions, I think Emily is a hopeful person. So by analyzing Emily's thoughts, words, and actions, I determined her character trait as hopeful. I went through and I did the same thing on a brand new excerpt that you have not seen called The Science Expert. I underlined the characters' words, I highlighted their thoughts, and I circled their actions. Pause this video and think. What can you notice about Megan as a character? Can you analyze her words, her thoughts, and her actions to determine a character trait for Megan? When I analyzed her thoughts, words, and actions, I was able to write a paragraph or an interpretation about Megan as a character. Megan makes an effort to include Xander in the soccer game at the end of the story, even though at the beginning she thought his words buzzed like a bug in her ears. She also offers to play some soccer later. This change in character and this kind action show Megan is a thoughtful and understanding person. So by analyzing the things that Megan said, thought, and did, I determined that she is a thoughtful and understanding person. Those are her character traits. Today, you will read this short story, Undersea Adventure. Then write a 2 to 5 sentence interpretation about the main character, Maggie, analyzing her thoughts, words, and actions to determine her character traits. Your interpretation can be similar to my interpretation of Megan and should include text evidence. Feel free to go back and look at my example here. Notice I used quotes when I was analyzing Megan's character traits, and I actually used 2 traits to describe her as a person. Your end product will be a 2 to 5 sentence paragraph or interpretation about the main character of this story, about Maggie. If you would like to challenge yourself further, the extension activity today is a fun one. Some of you guys did this with, if your ELA or your reading teacher used this year, this might be familiar to you. Please feel free to read the directions. This is also linked into the slides. And if you do not have dice at home, you can search for online dice and you can roll dice digitally on your iPad. Again, this is optional, but I think it's a really fun activity. Good luck analyzing characters today.